If you start eating 3 to 4 eggs every single day, your body doesn't just register it as breakfast, it registers it as a pattern. And patterns are what the body builds around. So the better question isn't what's inside an egg. The better question is what begins to shift inside the body when eggs become a daily constant. And that shift starts sooner than you'd think. It begins with digestion itself. Eggs happen to be one of the most digestible forms of animal protein available. Once they hit the stomach, hydrochloric acid starts denaturing the protein almost immediately. That allows enzymes further down in the small intestine to slice those proteins into usable amino acids with very little resistance. If this happens once or twice a week, the body processes it and moves on. But when it happens every single day, the digestive system starts to anticipate it. The same amino acids show up in roughly the same ratios at roughly the same intervals. And the body loves that kind of regularity. It stops improvising and starts optimizing. Here's what makes egg protein unusual. Most animal proteins come from muscle. Muscle tissue evolved to contract and generate force. Egg protein has a completely different origin. It exists to construct a living organism from a single cell. Because of that, the amino acid profile in eggs maps remarkably well onto what human tissue actually requires. When you eat 3 to 4 eggs a day, more of those amino acids get used and fewer get wasted. The body doesn't have to scavenge missing building blocks from its own tissue just to keep things running. Repair gets easier, cellular turnover runs smoother. Protein metabolism gradually becomes more balanced, not because you're eating more, but because you're eating something the body doesn't have to rearrange before it can use it. Eggs also contain leucine, an amino acid that acts more like a signal than a building block. Leucine tells the body that high-quality protein has arrived, and that it's safe to invest resources into repair and maintenance. When protein intake is erratic, that signal flickers on and off. When 3 to 4 eggs show up every single day, the signal becomes steady. The body stays in a maintenance state more often, instead of toggling between building and breaking down its own structures just to stay balanced. But protein only tells half the story. Eggs also deliver fat, and that changes how the body handles energy. Protein by itself is a poor fuel source. Burn too much of it, and you create excess nitrogen waste that the liver and kidneys have to deal with. The fat in the yolk solves that problem naturally. It gives the body a cleaner energy source alongside the protein. So instead of burning amino acids for fuel, the body can direct them toward building and repairing tissue. Over time, this reduces metabolic waste and makes the whole system more efficient. It's one of the reasons eggs perform differently from ultra-lean protein sources when consumed on a daily basis. The yolk does something else too. Its fat triggers bile secretion from the gallbladder. Bile is what allows the body to emulsify and absorb dietary fat. When this stimulus arrives daily, the digestive system gets better at handling fats in general, not just from eggs, but from anything else you eat alongside them. This is purely mechanical. The body adapts to repeated stimulation by becoming more efficient at the task. So even your absorption of fats from other foods in the same meal improves over time. Egg whites add their own layer to this. The proteins in egg whites originally evolved to protect a developing embryo from bacterial invasion. When cooked, those antimicrobial properties are neutralized, but the structural uniqueness of those proteins remains. This gives the body a different type of protein input than muscle meat provides. Variety in protein structure supports a broader pool of amino acid configurations, which the body can draw from for different repair and building tasks throughout the day. Now let's talk about what happens after digestion. Because once these nutrients enter the bloodstream on a daily basis, specific organs start changing how they operate. And this is where things get more interesting. The liver is one of the first to respond. Eggs are among the highest dietary sources of choline, a nutrient that most people are significantly deficient in. Choline serves a very specific function in the liver. It helps package fat into transport molecules called lipoproteins, so that fat can be shuttled out of liver cells and moved to where it's actually needed. When choline is scarce, fat tends to accumulate inside the liver. When 3 to 4 eggs supply choline on a daily basis, the liver has what it needs to keep fat circulating instead of storing it. This isn't a cleansing effect, it's a logistics effect. The raw material for fat export is simply available when it's needed. Choline also feeds into a deeper biochemical system called methylation. This is a network of chemical reactions the body uses to repair DNA, regulate which genes are turned on or off, and produce neurotransmitters like serotonin and dopamine. Methylation depends on a handful of nutrients working together, including choline, folate, and vitamin B12. Eggs contain all three. When those inputs arrive consistently day after day, the system runs with less friction. For people who carry common genetic variations that slow methylation down, and that includes a surprisingly large portion of the population, that daily consistency becomes even more valuable. Over weeks and months, the brain starts benefiting in a very specific way. Egg yolks are rich in phospholipids, which are the structural fats used to build and maintain the membranes around neurons. Neurons communicate through their membranes. When those membranes are well supplied with the right lipids, signal transmission stays efficient. When phospholipid intake is irregular, membrane maintenance becomes inconsistent, and neural communication suffers in ways that are subtle but real. Daily egg consumption removes that inconsistency. The result isn't a stimulant effect or a nootropic boost. It's a structural maintenance effect that compounds quietly over time. The eyes adapt as well. Egg yolks contain two carotenoids called lutein and zeaxanthin that the retina actively collects and concentrates. The retina is technically an extension of the central nervous system, and it's under constant oxidative stress from light exposure every waking hour. Lutein and zeaxanthin accumulate in retinal tissue, where they act as a natural filter against damaging high-energy blue light wavelengths. They also neutralize free radicals in cells that can't afford to be damaged. When eggs are eaten daily, these compounds build up gradually over time. The protection is slow and cumulative, not instant, but it directly reflects how consistently those nutrients arrive. Mineral handling changes too. Eggs supply vitamin K2, a nutrient that most people have never heard of, but that controls something critical, where calcium ends up in the body. Calcium is not inherently good or bad. What matters is whether it lands in bone tissue, where it strengthens the skeleton, or in soft tissues like arterial walls and joint cartilage, where it causes real problems. Vitamin K2 activates the proteins responsible for pulling calcium into bone and keeping it away from places it doesn't belong. With daily intake from eggs, that routing system operates more consistently, and calcium distribution becomes more controlled. There's also retinol, the active form of vitamin A. Unlike beta-carotene from plants, which has to be converted first, retinol is ready to use immediately. It maintains the epithelial tissues that line the respiratory tract, the digestive system, the sinuses, and the skin. These are the body's front-line barriers, and they turn over rapidly. Consistent retinol from daily eggs keeps that rebuilding process supplied, and also helps regulate immune signaling at those barrier surfaces. The effect is both structural and regulatory. Vitamin D from eggs adds another layer. While eggs alone won't meet full vitamin D requirements, daily consumption contributes to a baseline that supports immune function and bone metabolism. Vitamin D receptors exist throughout the body, in immune cells, in bone, and in muscle tissue. Even a modest but reliable daily input helps keep those systems from running on empty. One detail that often gets overlooked is what you eat alongside your eggs. Because egg yolks improve fat digestion, any fat-soluble nutrients in the same meal get absorbed more effectively. Pair eggs with spinach or kale, and you absorb significantly more carotenoids from those greens. Eat them alongside tomatoes, and compounds like lycopene become more bioavailable. Eggs don't contain those nutrients themselves. They just create a digestive environment that unlocks them from other foods. This makes eggs function almost like an absorption multiplier for the rest of your meal. Egg quality plays a role in all of this too. Hens raised on diets heavy in omega-6 fats produce yolks with a more inflammatory fatty acid profile. Eggs from hens with access to pasture or diets supplemented with omega-3 sources deliver a more balanced ratio. When you're eating eggs every single day, that difference accumulates. The body adjusts its inflammatory signaling based on whatever fatty acid input it receives most frequently. So where your eggs come from ends up mattering more than it would with occasional consumption. After several weeks of eating 3 to 4 eggs a day, none of these changes announce themselves loudly. There's no dramatic energy spike, no sudden visible transformation. What happens instead is quieter and far more structural. Protein metabolism settles into a more efficient rhythm. Fat transport through the liver becomes smoother. The brain and retinal tissue receive steady structural support. Calcium gets directed more accurately. Barrier tissues get maintained with less biological strain. The body simply adapts to a stable, nutrient-dense input and runs with less friction because of it. That's what daily egg consumption actually does. Not a magic food, not a superfood, just a consistent biological input that the body knows exactly what to do with, day after day. If this changed how you think about something as simple as eggs, hit subscribe. There's more like this coming.